The email stayed in her drafts folder for 6 days. Not because she didn't know what it said, but because she was afraid she understood exactly what it meant. Once she sent it, there would be no way back. My name is Harriet Sinclair, and I'm going to tell you a story about a woman who did everything right, trusted the people she was supposed to trust, and still lost. This isn't about revenge or redemption. It's about the moment you realize the ground beneath you was never solid to begin with. Nora Vetch had worked at Meridian Health Solutions for 11 years. 11 years of Employee of the Month plaques, perfect attendance records, and birthday cakes in the break room with her name misspelled in blue icing. She was a data analyst in the claims department. Not glamorous, not particularly well paid, but stable. And stability to Nora was worth more than ambition. She was 42. She lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Portland that hadn't gentrified yet. She had a cat named Butter who slept on her chest at night. She had a mother in Ohio who called every Sunday. She had a routine. The company was her second family. That's what her supervisor, Greg Tillerman, always said. "We take care of our own here, Nora. That's the Meridian way." Greg had hired her. He'd been her mentor when she didn't know how to read actuarial tables or navigate the labyrinth of insurance codes. He brought her coffee when she stayed late. He wrote her performance reviews with words like dependable, thorough, trusted. She believed him. It started small. In March, a new policy rolled out from corporate. Nothing dramatic, just a revision to how certain claims were flagged for additional review. Nora's job was to implement the new filters into the system, run the data, and generate reports for the underwriting team. She did what she always did. Followed the instructions, double-checked her work, submitted everything on time. But then she noticed something. A pattern. Claims from patients in certain zip codes, low-income areas predominantly, were being flagged at nearly triple the rate of others. The filters weren't catching fraud. They were catching poverty. At first she thought it was a mistake. A calibration error, maybe. She ran the data again. Same result. He brought it to Greg. They met in his office on a Thursday afternoon. He had one of those stand-up desks he never actually stood at and a framed photo of his family at Disneyland. His youngest daughter was holding a churro. "Greg," she said, setting her laptop on his desk. "I think there's an issue with the new claim filters." He glanced at the screen barely. "What kind of issue?" "They're disproportionately flagging people in lower-income neighborhoods. By a lot. I ran it 3 times. It's not random." Greg leaned back in his chair. He had this way of smiling that made you feel like you just told a joke only you found funny. "Nora, the system's working exactly as designed." She blinked. "But it's targeting people based on where they live." "It's targeting high-risk profiles," he corrected. "That's what the algorithm does. It identifies patterns. That's literally your job. But these aren't fraud patterns, Greg. These are just people who can't afford." "Nora." His voice was still friendly. "That's what made it worse. I appreciate that you're thorough." "I do. But this is above your pay grade. Corporate signed off on this months ago. It's been vetted by legal, by compliance, by everyone who needs to vet it. You did your job. Let it go." She sat there for a moment, the laptop screen glowing between them. "Okay," she said quietly. She didn't let it go. Over the next 2 weeks, Nora started digging. Not dramatically. No late-night hacking montages or secret meetings in parking garages. She pulled historical data. She cross-referenced claim denial rates before and after the policy change. She tracked which demographics were being delayed, audited, denied. The numbers didn't lie. Since March, claim denials in flagged zip codes had gone up by 38%. Average processing time had doubled. And the reasons given for denial were often technical, bureaucratic. Insufficient documentation, pre-existing condition clauses, eligibility review pending. She found a memo. It was buried in a shared drive she technically had access to but had never needed to open. It was from someone in corporate strategy, dated 4 months earlier, addressed to senior leadership. The subject line, Q2 Cost Reduction Initiatives. She read it 3 times. It was written in the language of business, clean, polite, bloodless. It talked about optimizing claim flow, reducing payout velocity, and leveraging predictive analytics to mitigate financial exposure. What it meant was simple. Delay claims from people who were less likely to complain. Deny claims from people who couldn't afford lawyers. Squeeze the vulnerable until they gave up. And it was working. Nora sat in her apartment that night with her laptop open on the kitchen table. Butter was purring beside her. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. She thought about the people behind the numbers. The single mother whose surgery got delayed. The man with diabetes whose insulin claim was flagged for review. The kid who needed an inhaler. She thought about Greg's smile. She drafted an email to the compliance department. She attached her analysis. She wrote it carefully, professionally, the way you're supposed to when you're trying to do the right thing within the system. She didn't send it. Not yet. Because part of her, some small superstitious part, still believed that if she did this the right way, if she followed the rules, someone would listen. The next morning she met with Lydia Cass. Lydia worked in compliance. She was older than Nora, sharp-eyed, with silver hair she wore in a tight bun. She had a reputation for being fair. Tough but fair. Nora had always respected her. They sat in a small conference room with glass walls. Lydia had a notebook open in front of her, a pen in her hand. Nora explained everything. The data. The patterns. The memo. Lydia listened. When Nora finished, there was a long silence. Lydia closed her notebook. Nora, she said slowly, I understand why this concerns you. I do. But you need to understand something. This company processes over 2 million claims a year. We have entire departments dedicated to risk assessment, legal review, regulatory compliance. What you're describing isn't a flaw. It's a feature. Nora felt something cold settle in her chest. A feature, she repeated. We operate within the law, Lydia continued. Everything we do is vetted by attorneys. The algorithms you're questioning were built by people with PhDs. You're a data analyst, Nora. You're good at your job, but you're not seeing the full picture. I'm seeing people getting hurt. Lydia's expression didn't change. That's not what this is. Then what is it? It's business. Nora left that meeting and went back to her desk. She opened her drafts folder. The email was still there waiting. She saved it. She didn't send it. Not yet. Because she needed to be sure. She needed to know beyond any doubt that what she was seeing was real. And that the people she worked with, the people she trusted, knew it too. If stories like this matter to you, take a moment to subscribe. These are the kinds of stories that stay with you. April bled into May. Nora kept working. She showed up on time. She ran her reports. She smiled at Greg in the hallway. She ate lunch at her desk and listened to her coworkers talk about their weekends, their kids, their plans for summer. She felt like she was living in two realities at once. In one, she was Nora Vetch, reliable employee, quiet and competent, someone you could count on. In the other, she was a woman holding a secret that was slowly crushing her. She started having trouble sleeping. She'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the memo. The numbers. The people. She thought about telling someone outside the company. A journalist maybe. Or a regulator. But every time she imagined it, she heard Lydia's voice. You're not seeing the full picture. What if she was wrong? What if there was some explanation she didn't understand, some legal nuance, some larger context? What if she destroyed her career, her life, over a misunderstanding? So she waited. And while she waited, she kept digging. She found more memos. More emails. A presentation deck from a corporate retreat in Arizona where senior leadership discussed operational efficiency gains and margin optimization strategies. There were graphs, projections, targets. One slide showed estimated savings from the new claim review process. $14.3 million in the first year. Another slide showed patient impact metrics. They called it friction. As in, how much friction could they introduce into the claims process before people gave up? The answer, according to their data, was a lot. Nora printed nothing. She saved everything to a personal flash drive she kept in her purse. She didn't know what she was going to do with it. She just knew she couldn't let it disappear. In mid-May, Greg called her into his office again. This time someone else was there. A woman Nora didn't recognize. Mid-50s, expensive suit, calm expression. She introduced herself as Sharon Mears from Human Resources. Nora's stomach dropped. Have a seat, Nora, Greg said. He wasn't smiling. She sat. Sharon opened a folder. Nora, we need to talk about some concerns that have been brought to our attention. Concerns. You've been accessing files outside your normal scope of work. Pulling reports that aren't part of your assigned projects. Spending time in shared drives that don't pertain to your role. Nora's mouth went dry. I was doing research. For a potential compliance issue. Did anyone ask you to do that research? Sharon's voice was calm. Kind even. No, but... Did you raise this concern through the proper channels? I spoke to Greg. And Lydia Cass. Sharon glanced at Greg. He nodded slightly. And what did they tell you? Nora hesitated. They said the system was working as designed. So you were told there was no issue. I don't think they understood. Nora. Sharon leaned forward slightly. I want to be very clear. No one is questioning your intentions. We know you care about this company. But what you're doing is creating risk. For yourself and for Meridian. Accessing confidential files without authorization is a serious violation of company policy. It exposes us to legal liability. Do you understand that? Nora felt the room tilt. I wasn't trying to. I know, Sharon said gently. But impact matters more than intent. We're not here to punish you. We're here to help. But you need to stop. Immediately. There was a pause. If you have concerns, Sharon continued, there are proper channels. You can submit a formal report to the ethics hotline. It's anonymous. Safe. But you can't go rogue. You can't decide on your own what rules apply to you. That's not how this works. Greg finally spoke. Nora, you're a good employee. You've been here a long time. We don't want to lose you. But you need to let this go. Nora looked at him. Really looked at him. The man who'd hired her. Who'd mentored her. Who'd told her over and over that Meridian was a family. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even cold. He just looked tired. Like this was something he'd done before. Wait, Nora said. She left the office. She went back to her desk. She opened her email drafts. And she finally sent it. Not to compliance. Not to the ethics hotline. To her personal email. She sent herself everything. 2 days later she was fired. They called it a voluntary separation. Sharon Mears walked her through the paperwork in a small HR office with motivational posters on the walls. Teamwork makes the dream work. Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Nora signed where they told her to sign. They gave her 2 weeks severance. They told her she'd be eligible for Cobra. They wished her well. Greg didn't come to say goodbye. No one did. She packed her desk in a banker's box. A coffee mug. A framed photo of butter. A small succulent that had somehow survived 11 years under fluorescent lights. Security walked her to her car. She spent the first week at home in a kind of fog. She applied for unemployment. She updated her resume. She fed butter. She called her mother and lied about why she'd left Meridian. She didn't tell anyone what she knew. Because who would she tell? She thought about going to the press. But she didn't know any journalists. She didn't know how that worked. And every time she imagined trying to explain it, trying to make someone believe her, she heard Sharon's voice. Impact matters more than intent. He thought about going to a lawyer. But lawyers cost money. And what would she even say? She'd been fired for cause. She'd violated company policy. They had documentation. She thought about the ethics hotline. The one Sharon had mentioned. She looked it up. It was run by a third-party company. Anonymous, they said. Safe. But when she read the fine print, she saw that reports were forwarded to senior leadership for review. The same people who'd written the memos. She didn't call. In June, she got a call from Lydia Cass. Nora almost didn't answer. But something made her pick up. Nora, Lydia said. Her voice was careful. I wanted to check in. See how you're doing. Nora didn't say anything. I know this has been hard, Lydia continued. And I want you to know, what happened, it wasn't personal. You're a good person. You care. That's not a bad thing. Then why did you let them fire me? There was a long silence. Because I have a job to do, Lydia said quietly. And so do you. Wherever you end up next, I hope you remember that. Sometimes caring isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose what you can live with. She hung up. Nora sat on her couch, phone in her hand, butter curled beside her. And for the first time since March, she cried. Not because she'd lost her job. Because she'd lost something bigger than that. She'd lost the belief that doing the right thing mattered. She never went to the press. She never called a lawyer. She never sent the files to a regulator or posted them online, or did any of the things people do in movies when they want justice. Because this isn't a movie. This is what betrayal actually looks like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's a woman sitting alone in an apartment, realizing that the people she trusted didn't just lie to her. They made her complicit. They made her part of the system. And when she tried to step outside of it, they erased her. Nora Vetch got a new job 4 months later. A smaller company. Less pay. No plaques on the wall. She never told them about Meridian. She never told anyone. Because who would believe her? And what would it change? This is the story no one wants to hear. The one where the person who sees the truth doesn't win. They just lose differently. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think about the systems we trust and the people we believe, then share it. Subscribe. Because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're warnings. And sometimes a warning is all we get.